Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
How could this have happened? For this man is not our president. No, he is their president. We will do all in our power to make that deadly clear. We may not do it the day he's in office, but we will surely get to it. As sure as the turning of the earth, we'll get to it. We'll get it written down somewhere that there was some mistake. Someone left the gate open, and this man got himself into the Oval Office. You don't believe this? Check the numbers. 57% of the Republican Party wants this man run out of office and thrown to the curb. They can't come up with a reason he deserves impeachment, but that's not their fault. Not really. You see, they never went looking for a reason. They never needed one. It was not what he did. It was from the outset who he was.
Who he was, and you know what that means, what his skin color is. Welcome back to the show, folks. And before we get to our next guest here, we want your opinion. Do you think the president should be impeached? Go to newsmax.com/Obama poll to vote. That's newsmax.com/Obama poll. All right, joining us now, Newsmax contributor and national affairs correspondent for National Review Online and the author of a great book recently out in June, Obama's Enforcer, all about the Holder Justice Department. That's John Fund. And columnist and contributing editor for TheRoot.com, David Swerdlick. And let me start with you, John, and as we welcome you, should Obama be impeached? You say no.
No, the American people by 79% say impeachment should be reserved for serious crimes and misdemeanors. I think Obama has abused his executive authority. The Supreme Court has found 13 times unanimously in the last 2 years that he's overstepped his constitutional boundaries, but that doesn't merit impeachment.
All right, David?
Well, you know, Steve, I think yesterday in the National Journal, the National Review, John made a very temperate, sober case for why the president should be censured rather than impeached. But I'm not sold, though, that there's still the underlying reason for that. And I think it's a part of a bigger piece of this idea that there's something wrong with this president, that this president is somehow an interloper, that this president is somehow apart from other presidents. And I don't feel like conservatives or Republicans have yet to make a case or lay out exactly what he has done to merit even this talk of impeachment or censure.
So you think censure goes too far? John, you did write a great, brilliant piece on censure. Talk about what you put in the piece and why you believe the president should be censured by the Congress.
Well, we've had presidents issue executive orders before, but not quite like this one. It's not the number of executive orders, it's the quality of them, what's in them. Obamacare, 40 times the president has changed the law, not just tweaked it, but changed the law, changed enforcement dates, changed who's covered by it, who's not covered by it, without consulting Congress. Give you the most. The president has changed the law, not just tweaked it, but changed the law, changed enforcement dates, changed who's covered by it, who's not covered by it, without consulting Congress. Give you the most egregious example. He let the employer mandate lapse. He just simply said, we're not going to enforce it. Now, Congress was in favor, the House of Representatives at least, was in favor of letting the mandate lapse, but they said he should come to them and pass a law. That's how our Constitution works. They offered to pass the law that said you can delay the employer mandate. They said that to the president, and the Senate said it would go along with it. Obama said, no, I want to be able to have the power as an executive to simply make it up as I go along. So even when the Congress was willing to give him the authority, he said, no, I'll veto that. I want the power to do it all by myself.
And David, you can't argue with the fact that John is so right. It's not a contest of numbers; it's the magnitude. And if he issues this next executive order, on immigration reform, so to speak, where he might grant amnesty to 5-6 million illegals in this country, this is all unprecedented stuff. And it's not just the ACA; it's on immigration, where he's selectively enforced and not enforced. It's on the Welfare Reform Act signed by Clinton, where he's enforced and not enforced and changed rules. This is unprecedented to the point where someone like Jonathan Turley, who voted for him twice, said it's what the founders feared most.
Yeah, Steve, I don't really look at it as unprecedented. I think in the case of the Affordable Care Act, you have a situation where, much like President Bush with Medicare Part D, President Obama, made some decisions with regard to implementation and administrative delays in terms of administration about that law, which I think that congressional Republicans have a case to argue that it's arguable that he was following the law as it was passed. But there is always, when you have omnibus legislation, this idea that the executive branch has to implement it in a way that just makes sense. This is not a precedent. The other thing you have is a situation on, let's say, immigration. Republicans have had a lot of sound and fury over the DREAM Act kids, but that was a decision to delay action on those kids, not to grant them citizenship or permanent residence. And so, again, I understand why.
Let John respond. Go ahead.
In 2011, President Obama himself said, I've had my people look at this. I don't have the authority to let these dreamers stay. He apparently consulted his own lawyers at his own Justice Department. Suddenly he changed his mind. I don't think you can just change your mind as to what your presidential powers are. Secondly, as to Obamacare, if you're a resident of Guam, you're a U.S. citizen. If you're a resident of the Mariana Islands, you're a U.S. citizen. Those are U.S. territories. President Obama literally said a few weeks ago, we're not going to have Obamacare in those islands. Can he do that? Can he literally say to thousands and thousands of American citizens, you're not covered by the law? It just vanishes? Can he?
Okay, well, let me address those. Let me address those one at a time. In terms of Guam and the Mariana Islands, that's not something I actually have done a lot of reporting on. So I mean,
that's what he did.
So I think you have a point with regard to the U.S. citizens in those territories. With regard to immigration, I would simply say this, that the president, as I understand it, was speaking about whether or not he could reach a final disposition on the citizenship or the residency of any undocumented immigrant, not whether he could delay action on a particular class of those DREAM Act kids until there was a further disposition, in law from some kind of omnibus comprehensive immigration reform legislation, which I think at that time he expected would be passed, but clearly now we know.
All right, let John respond. Final word from John.
If you don't remember, he had both houses of Congress in 2009 and 2010, and he had the presidential pen to sign any bill they passed. They chose not to. So the Democratic Congress didn't pass comprehensive immigration reform. So suddenly when the Republican Congress doesn't pass comprehensive immigration reform, he says, oh, I suddenly have new powers. I can act on my own. That is making it up as you go along.
And Josh Earnest was asked about that yesterday and at the White House press briefing, exactly that question. And he said kind of, well, we had other things going on at that time. We were trying to rebound the economy, blah, 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 as if there's nothing going on right now other than immigration. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. John Fund and David Swerdlick, appreciate you both being here.